Joining us, this is Good Morning Nigeria, and joining us to discuss NNPC's plan to acquire equity in the ongoing Dangote Refinery business plan is the Group Managing Director of NNPC, Mele Kolo-Kyari. Thank you so much for coming on Good Morning
Thank you very much, my sister.
Yes,
all right. Thank you very much once again, GMD, for being with us on Good Morning Nigeria today. Of course, one of the stories we read on the front pages of the paper this morning has to do with the stories that has been trending for a while, namely the plan by the NNPC to acquire an equity stake in a Dangote Refinery, which is nearing completion in the Lekki area of Lagos. But that announcement seemed to have come also on the heels of the rehabilitation of one of the two refineries in the Port Harcourt area. It had created quite some storm. So the issue is that what has informed the decision of the NNPC to take a stake in the Dangote Refinery? And how much are you taking, if you indeed you want to take a stake?
Thank you very much, Kinsley. I think what we need to first address is why is the Dangote Refinery important? First, we know for sure that this refinery is a 650,000 barrels per day refinery. It means that this refinery will deliver at least 50 million liters of PMS, or gasoline or petrol, any name we call it, into the Nigerian market or into the international market. And it's so strategic that everybody agreed. I'm sure you must have seen a number of visitations by all well-meaning Nigerians, from government to institutions to businesses, applauding the very strategic step that Dangote Group took to establish a refinery in our country. And there's no country anywhere, no resource-dependent country will sit, watch such enormous investment that is related to energy security anywhere in the world, to look by the side and say, oh, this is good business, and I'll watch by the side. No one does this. And by the way, we all know that the Dangote brand, now I'm going back to the general issues around equity. The Dangote brand in this country is one of the greatest brands that we have. Many of the investments that they had, Nigerians took equity in it. If he has floated the shares of that refinery today, I know that everybody will rush to take equity in it. It means that there's a trust that this project will be delivered and that there's a history of delivery of this project. Having said that, we as a national oil company have a primary responsibility of ensuring energy security for our country. Energy security means many things. It also means general security of the country, not just about energy only, but general security of our country. And the meaning of this is that you must secure the supply sources. And we have a number of issues. First, we are trying to fix our refineries. We will fix our refineries. We have awarded the contract for the fixing of the Port Harcourt Refinery. We are well ahead of our plan and our schedule. On the Warri and Kaduna Refinery, we will issue the EPC contracts for Warri and Kaduna very soon, hopefully before the end of July. That will come parallel by matter of process. It will also run with the Port Harcourt Refinery, so that will deliver all of them about the same time. So the net effect is that you're going to have a petroleum product supply hub in West Africa. That means with NNPC's refineries in place, Dangote's refinery operating, and of course, a number of other initiatives that we are doing. There are condensate refineries that we're building, about 5 of them. We're working with our partners. We'll take FID on 2 of them in the next 2-3 months. So overall, you're going to have a massive hub of production of petroleum in West Africa. This will going to do something else. It's going to change the flow of product supply in the whole globe. Because now products are coming one way from Europe mostly and Middle East into Nigeria. Now this will completely reverse. And you cannot watch this exactly very, very secure situation, a position of advantage happening, and then you are a national oil company and you will not take a stake in this. As a matter of strategy, we decided, at least not just today, not with Modular Refinery, actually before he started it, that we knew that we have to expand our portfolio. We knew that we have to take equity in very many assets. Today, we have equity in a number of other smaller assets and businesses, fertilizer plants, methanol plants, and so on and so forth. So it's really not a surprise that we decided to approach Dangote. It was not at his instance. We wanted it. We know that it is strategic. We know that this business will fare up. We have extreme capacity to ensure that we evaluate it properly and to see that we're going to make value out of it. So it is really, really a very big, massive endeavor for us. We know that this is something that has to be done. We also know that what doing this means, good business for NNPC, and it will improve our balance sheet. So it's really not about what people you see in the media, that, NNPC management staff have rushed, they have taken equity in Dangote, they shouldn't have done this, we are overvalued and all this. This industry is a very, very regulated industry. There are processes for evaluating assets. There are international standards for doing this. We in NNPC are not the exception. No bank will give you money if you didn't follow these processes. We are not going to take a cover of government money to buy this equity. We are going to borrow on the back of the cash flow that will come from this refinery, on the back of transactions that will come on the back of the equity and the dividend that will come from this business. So really, we are not exposing this country. We are taking advantage of a business opportunity. I'm not very sure Mr. Dangote wants us to do this. But I know for sure that this is a position that we need to take. I think this is what we're trying to do.
Is it backed by any federal government policy here?
We are a business, my sister. NNPC is a business. We have taken equity in very many assets. There is a governance process within our company that passes through all layers of management, from the lowest level possible to the top management committee of the company, to the board of the company, and where necessary, we even take it to the Federal Executive Council. In this case, for the acquisition of this equity, but we know that this company is owned by this country, by the shareholders of 200 million Nigerians. We also knew that we are doing this on their behalf. We will take it to the Federal Executive Council that will get their endorsement, but because we believe that this is the right thing to do, we are not exposing this country, we are making something that is good for this country. And no country will do this. We know people who have made that mistake of allowing such massive endeavors of energy proportion, of security proportion, to run without the government having a seat on the board of this institution, and we know what the experience is. So we're convinced that governance processes are there. We will follow these governance processes. We have done that to the last level, and I'm sure you have seen some of the speculation. The board rush and endorse the process. Yes, it's very disheartening. It's very sad. This country of doubt. People don't trust anyone. No matter the best of their intentions, people still think that something wrong is happening. But we know this process is completely transparent. We know that it meets all international standards. We have no need. In fact, Mr. Dangote will be naive to even offer bribe to anyone, because actually he's not willing to sell this equity to us.
What stake is NNPC pitching to acquire?
Yeah, we are taking 20% equity in the plan. We have not concluded that process. We have not closed that transaction. We have made all the governance expectations. We have term sheets endorsed. We have the board of NNPC agreeing that we should proceed with this process and acquire other approval processes that are still pending. So therefore, at this moment in time, I can confirm that our interest is to take 20% equity, and I hope that we'll close this deal as soon as possible.
And there have been rumors of maybe increment in the price of fuel. And let me ask you this question. How would this acquisition of equity impact or stabilize the price of petroleum products in the country?
Thank you very much, Juma. I think this is the point. When you get this refinery working, you will have a seat on the board of this company. If you take 20% equity in any business, you will have a seat on the board of that company. You have massive influence around the decisions that will be made, allowing the flow of the product that will come out of this facility. Therefore, literally, you can say we have control over 20% of the production that will come from this facility. Mind you, when you have a refinery operating in your country, it does one thing for you, that it takes out the cost of freight, which means that when you're buying this product from other countries, it will take at least 21 naira per liter of AG product. We know that by doing this, we are taking over at least 21 naira from each liter of petroleum product. And coming back to the pricing of petroleum product, it is very true today that the price that we sell product today at 162 and the fuel station is well below market price. There are ongoing engagements to ensure that we are full the regulation of the market. We are very conscious, because it is also the desire of Mr. President for us to minimize any impact that this will have on the ordinary people. We know that the subsidy may not be sustainable in the long term, but you also need to take the necessary steps to make sure that you follow processes, you make sure that there is no exploitation of the ordinary person. We know that the prices that people will pay eventually will be the right price for the petroleum product. And these conversations are going on, engagements are going on with the Governors Forum, with the organized level, with the civil society organizations, to make sure that we all appreciate the fact that we can no longer afford this. But when can we do it? How can we do it is the discussion that is going on. And we haven't closed in this. I have no idea when this will happen, but I know for sure that these engagements are going on. And obviously, it's not next month, it's not the 2 months time, because that's not realistic. There's a conversation that is going on that I'm part to. And we have no closure around it, but fundamentally anchored around Mr. President's concern that we should be careful about how things will affect the ordinary people. And we're very conscious of this. We understand the pain. We know for sure that there's a massive arbitrage happening here. We're selling at 160 across our borders. This anywhere sells around 400 naira to the liter. So there is an incentive for many things, many wrong things. Smuggling, we know that for sure smuggling is not business, but it's happening. And of course, it's very difficult for you to control when you have this massive arbitrage. And there are steps that we have taken to ensure that we even control the smuggling, involving all the agencies of government from the EFCC to the Department of State Service, the police, the Nigerian Customs Service, the organized marketers, and so on to make sure that we curtail this. But we know for sure that the ultimate solution will be to see how you can bridge the pricing so that, now cross-border trade becomes trade and not smuggling.
Okay, I'll return to the issue of transborder smuggling of refined petroleum products. But I'd like you to clarify much more the issue relating to the refineries. The Port Harcourt Refinery has already been awarded for full rehabilitation. And you said the processes for Kaduna and Warri are also on, and that those other two refineries might be completed in terms of rehab at the same time with the Port Harcourt Refinery. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, you also indicated that you are on the verge of concluding FIDs, that's final investment decisions, on some 5 or so condensate refineries. What are the details of these condensate refineries? Where are they located? And what impact are they likely to have on the supply of refined petroleum products in the country when they come on stream?
Thank you very much. First of all, let me explain what the condensate refinery concept means. Condensates are very light version of crude oil, and by their very nature, you can easily crack them. You don't need a standard massive refinery to convert condensate into finished petroleum product. And the almost 80 to 90% of the total volume of condensate can be converted to gasoline or to the light products. So that's the advantage that it has. And also, it's also out of the OPEC code restrictions because you can produce any volume of condensate and it will not be part of the OPEC regulation or OPEC control around production numbers. So we saw this as an opportunity. We have a number of condensate production, either as plant condensate or as condensate that is coming from the oil wells directly. And when you do a condensate refinery, it's usually done very close to the source of the production. And that means it takes away all those issues around vandals, having impact on your pipeline and so on. So what we did is to identify about 5 locations where these condensates are available, where we can convert them into volume, ranging from about 20,000 barrels per day to up to 50,000 barrels per day by location. It depends on where you are. In some places, you can make the 50,000 barrels. In some places, you can make the 20,000. The cumulative effect is that we are seeing around 200,000 barrels of condensate refining capacity in our country, scattered in many locations, some in Delta State, some in River State, some in Edo State, and another in Akwa Ibom State. The net effect will be that you're going to have small refineries that are scattered in the country, that are standard, and they're also condensate. And that way, you will see products being made available very close to its users. And it takes out many risks. It takes risks around bundles effect. It takes around risks of transportation and many other benefits. So in terms of location, I've stated this, but what is very important is that they are not very costly. Because they are very simple plants. They will call them splitter plants, and at the end of the day, with very basic funding, that you are able to do it. So they will add off to the capacity that our own refineries will bring on the table once they are completed. We're very confident that we'll deliver on this refinery. We have never seen this level of commitment. We have seen financing institutions, including Afrexim and many other banks of international repute, have agreed to lend us money on the back of the cash flow of the refinery. That's what's different. They are not just giving us money so that we can go and sell crude oil and pay them. No. They believe that these refineries will work, will have a maintenance structure or an operation structure. We call it O&M structure, operate and maintenance structure. We're going to hand over to a third party so that they will operate this refinery. This is part of the condition of the lenders, that you are not going to run it. We say, well, we don't have a problem with this. The cash flow that will be generated by the refinery will be sufficient to pay for the loan. So we're not putting anything at stake. We're not putting these federations' resources at stake. We are making it look a business that it is, which is that this business will pay for itself. And I think that's what is novel, what is very, very different. And And we are not looking for any government subsidy or any government support on this, rather than much more than giving us the guarantees that we are a company owned by
these
this.
refineries, sorry, Jume,
Yeah,
Jume,
okay.
I was just wondering, sorry, I'd like the GMD to clarify this. The condensate refineries, from what you have described, are they similar to or the equivalent of the so-called modular refineries?
No, they are not. You know, it's a modular refinery means just a small refinery. We call it maybe a boiling pot. Maybe that's the best way to describe it. It doesn't make the light products. It barely makes diesel. So when you have a modular refinery, except you're able to upgrade it to a certain level, you are not able to produce certain grade of product from it. So essentially, all modular refineries that you know today make the high-end products, which are typically gas, diesel. And of course, you have some naphtha that is being produced, and it's very difficult to manage this. So when you say modular, you know, the whole concept is having a small refinery. Yes, the optics are very good, but the reality is that you have to do better than this to get all grades of product.
Okay, exactly. And now Nigeria has a lot of hydrocarbons in other regions of the country, and I believe there's a search for it. But even, you know, as the International Energy Agency has predicted a net zero emission by 2050, how do you sort of balance it?
Yes, Jim, you see, the issues around energy transitions must be put into context. You know, when they say energy transition, it means going to a net zero carbon situation. It doesn't mean moving away from fossil fuel to renewables. That does what it means. It means that you're going to do your production in such a way that the net effect of what you are doing does not affect the environment. And that means, even by the best of even the EIA estimates, that nobody has seen peak gas consumption in less than 30 years. That means gas will continue to be relevant for the next 30 years, and it will not reach its peak of demand. In spite of all the energy transition consideration that we are seeing, it's seen as the vehicle for the transition to the net carbon zero. There is also no assumption anywhere that even oil itself can peak in less than 10 years. That means for the next 10 to 30 years, you still have relevance of fossil fuel being part of the primary part of the energy mix. But there are efforts that are going on to make sure that whatever you do, the emissions become balanced. For instance, in our country now, we must take out the flares. That flare means that you are reducing the carbon print. You produce this gas so that the gas, you know, powers your power plants. It creates gas-based industry. By implication, what you are doing is you are reducing your carbon footprint. So when you look at the effect of what you are doing, in spite of the reduction in what you do with the gas, because as a vehicle for reducing carbon, you also need to focus on some other renewable efforts. So on a balance, you will see that the effect of the renewables and that of the petroleum that you are utilizing will come to net zero. It doesn't mean that oil will go away. It's not likely to go away. In fact, even by 2015, the best of estimates say that oil will be providing up to 50% of the energy mix that the world requires. So oil is not going to go away. Gas is not going to go away, but its utility will go away. There will be more use for gas, for instance, in making petrochemicals. Even the oil itself cracked into something different than gasoline. Yes, there are a number of talks around electric vehicles. You know, in this country, our first focus now is to provide power, to make sure that infrastructure is on ground. We're able to mobilize people out of poverty into some form of comfort zone. And this takes time. We're nowhere near what you see in Europe and co. And definitely, this country needs oil to create the resources, to create the development, to create the middle class that we need, and also to empower people so that we can come out of poverty as a first step. Then we'll worry about electric vehicles. And yes, of course, there are a number of initiatives going on. Very recently, Mr. Vice President launched the electric vehicle. Absolutely correct, the right direction to go. But we do need power to get this working. We do need people of resources to make this work, and this is our focus, and that's why we're focusing on gas as a country, as a policy of government, to make sure that we deepen domestic gas utilization in the country so they can create more wealth for our country, and that more people will come out of poverty, jobs will be created, and ultimately then we can face the question of the net carbon situation.
Okay, JMB, you speak with a great deal of optimism about the downstream sector. We know, of course, there is also the upstream and then the midstream. But in all of this, it's been said over the years that the game changer in the industry is the Petroleum Industry Bill, which has, as it were, languished in the legislature for well over a decade. We've seen the goalposts being shifted. Last time we were told that it was going to be in April. And then they came up again and said, no, it will be in June. Today is the 29th of June. The month is ending tomorrow. How much do you expect of a game changer in the petroleum industry bill when it is passed? I'm asking this question because I want to also assume that as a critical stakeholder, the NNPC would have been consulted in the last stages of crossing the T's and dotting the I's in this otherwise problematic bill.
Thank you very much. I think one step back is very useful. What are you really dealing with? Our petroleum legislations today, the primary instrument we have in the industry today is the Petroleum Act and the Petroleum Profit Tax Act. Both of them, for all intention, they are laws that were crafted in the 60s, very late 60s. There hasn't been significant changes to the provisions of this law. It means that this industry has moved forward over the last 50 years, and we haven't moved with that time. And that means our laws are very archaic. It hasn't met the requirement of today's world or today's business in the petroleum industry in general. And of course, the effort to change these laws didn't actually start last decade. It actually started in year 2000, when the Oil and Gas Industry Committee was set up by President Obasanjo to bring up reforms in the oil and gas industry. Literally, what it means is that change the governance structure and change the fiscal environment. And of course, as soon as you introduce that uncertainty, by year 2000, the whole industry started watching what we do, because this industry works on certainty, that we plan 20 years ahead. So if there's no line of sight around stability of your law or your processes, your fiscal regime, nobody's going to put money in your industry. And that is why since year 2000 till date, you have very, very marginal, massive projects that happen in the industry. Everyone that you have seen on the table today were committed prior to year 2000, and a few of them that happened, they are still bleeding. Because we are not able to fix our fiscal regime so that it can fit into this. So now coming back to what the petroleum industry will do, it is going to correct these imbalances. It is going to make us a much more competitive business environment. I'm sure Nigerians are aware that oil is still found in very many locations that were never expected. People's choices are changing. For instance, COVID-19 has shown us that the consumption of crude oil has gone down drastically. People are not ready to come back and get out of their homes anymore. That means transportation fuel volumes will come down, and so on and so forth. So the realities have changed. So that means you have to change your fiscal environment to make it more attractive. What companies do when they make business decisions is to look at the balance of alternatives. You have a prospect in Nigeria, you have in Angola, and so on. They will only simply look at it. If I put my money here, am I going to make 12% return, 30% return, 15% return? If your case is 12% return, no matter how nice you speak, no company is going to invest in their country. And countries do realize this, and that is why this petroleum industry bill will address that inadequacy. And of course, beyond this, there are structural issues in the industry. For instance, in the past, we have focused much more on the upstream. We haven't paid much attention to the downstream and the gas and the midstream sector. And by having two sets of regulators in the petroleum industry, one will focus primarily on deepening utilization of gas and also making consumption of petroleum much easier for Nigerians at a scale that is bigger than what we have today. So you can't do this except you have that structure. And this bill will correct that imbalance so that there's a focus on downstream, because we know for sure that going forward that you have to consume what you produce. And probably in another 10 years' time, whatever you produce, you have to consume it yourself. And therefore, if you don't have that structure to enable you to do this, then you are in trouble. So put all this together. You're going to have a bill that is going to address the fiscal concerns of your partners and also the local concerns of government and all of us to make sure that petroleum becomes a value to us and not a cost to us. And I'm very convinced that the National Assembly will pass this bill. I'm very engaged in this process. I'm the chairman of the government's technical committee on the petroleum industry, so I'm very familiar with the content of this bill. And I'm very, very confident that the bill will deliver what will be of value to this country and all of us. And we have taken the assurance of the National Assembly. I understand that this week it will be put on the floor of the National Assembly. I believe they will do this. If they do this, the conversation should not last more than 2 weeks because there's massive engagement that is going on, and I believe that we'll cross this. So, yes, the end of June has come, but obviously from the assurances that we have from the National Assembly that they will pass this bill probably the maximum in the next 2 weeks.
Yes, the end of June has come. Let's talk about the update on the alleged NNPC zero remittance to the Federation Allocation Account Committee.
Yes, I think Jumai is...
And where would you see the oil sector going forward in the future?
Yes, thank you very much. You see, this zero allocation story is what you have seen in the media. It was a communication between us and our representative, our shareholders, the Federation Allocation Committee. To be precise, we do submit a forecast to government on what we see coming in the next 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. When you say NNPC delivery to the Federation account, it's just one element taken out of context. First, when you produce petroleum, we're at the center of this. NNPC manages almost 80% of all the production that is happening in this country because of the partnership that we have with international oil companies and even local oil companies. And at the end of it, you produce oil, you pay taxes, you pay royalties. You have to produce the oil before you can pay taxes and royalties. So there are revenues coming in form of taxes and royalties to the as long as our operation continues to run. The other part of it is the dividend that should come from NNPC on a monthly basis. It simply means that take away your cost, and then the balance of the cash is sent into the Federation account. So it's just one element of petroleum revenue that people are focused on. So what NNPC delivers to the Federation is beyond what you see at FEC. So when you see those numbers coming to there, it's very possible. For instance, your cost is maybe 60% of your total revenue that is directly within NNPC's control and within the sales process of NNPC. Then you are now dealing with the petroleum subsidy matter. So there is nowhere you're going to make that money. We're all consuming this subsidy, all of us, the whole 200 million Nigerians, to the benefit of all of us. And there is nowhere you are going to make that. So the money that you would have brought on the table for everybody to share vanishes because we are using it to support the funding of petroleum sources. So when you take out an amount as high as, for instance, 160 billion naira, it is very possible. It is very simple. Any Nigerian can do this computation. Today, we know our consumption is not 60 million liters, but we are supplying 60 million liters because of the issues we have around cross-border smuggling and very many other complications that we have in this business. So when you have 60 million liters every day for 30 days, and then you have a difference. What you're selling at 162 in the market is somewhere around 250 something naira to the liter. And when you take the difference, it's just simple arithmetic. Anyone can do this. So I'm calling Nigerians at home to do this. You can do this arithmetic yourself. And it throws out 140, 150 billion naira. There is no way you can have this and also have all the revenues that you are expecting. So it's really some complications that are real, but unfortunately it's taken out of context. And we're happy to serve Nigerians. What we are doing is on their behalf. So, but what is very clear is that you cannot eat your cake and have it.
Yes. Well, still on the issue of fuel smuggling, because we're just referencing it now in terms of subsidy payments and so on and so forth. There are sometimes conflicting figures as to what our fuel consumption is on a daily basis, what we import now that there's virtually zero domestic production. And the issue of smuggling has been with us for over 3 decades. I'm sure you are familiar with this. I mean, it's always also been an argument in the subsidy debate to say, look, fuel sells across the border for so much because it is more lucrative for smugglers to take it out. So they are now taking it out. Therefore, work out your price regime and then increase your fuel price. So what is it that we now seek to do to curb smuggling? And again, I've asked myself this fairly basic question. How many vehicles are there in our neighboring countries where fuel is supposed to be smuggled to? Are the vehicles up to the number of vehicles we have in the Lagos-Ogun area? Is smuggling real or it's a phantom?
No, it's Kinsley. I appreciate this perspective. First of all, let's look at the context of the West African sub-region and beyond it, all the way to Central African Republic, all the way to the Sudan. It's very true that there's no country that has the population of cars that we have in this country. That's very correct. Yeah, in no country in Africa has the number of vehicles that we have in this country.
Seriously? Absolutely.
So now, and you also have a challenge and business environment for your neighbors across West Africa. There are 2 things that are involved in bringing petroleum. First, the logistics, and secondly, your ability to raise foreign exchange for you to support that transaction. As the price of crude oil goes up, the ability of very many of our neighbors, which we all know, they are much weaker than us economically, they don't have the capacity that we have. So even the ability to raise foreign exchange to support this becomes diminished. So they have no choice than to source for petroleum from you. I can give you a personal example. I was in Sudan for a private visit, and a gentleman, a Nigerian, told me that, Mr. Kiari, I understand you work for NNPC, that I understand that people are making money from fuel from Nigeria in Sudan, and can I help him so that he can have fuel brought into Sudan? So it tells you that fuel in this country gets to as far as the Sudan, because the incentive is there, because, two reasons. First, pricing is an issue. Second is that those countries don't even have an option than to look for other softer sources of that supply. Now, when you come to consumption, and I've said it clearly, that we supply up to 60 million liters per day, average, into this country, but we know this is not our consumption. That 60 million amounts to the evacuation from our depots. What gets out of our depots, NNPC's depots, private depots, is up to 60 million liters per day. So we know it's not our consumption. We also know that it moves freely across. It is our job to contain this, and we have taken very many significant steps of recent on the directive of Mr. President, that we cannot say that we are unable to control smuggle across the border. And it's paying up. And we have seen significant drop in those numbers in the last 3 to 4 weeks, as high as drop of up to 6 million liters per day. So we know that it is possible to pull this down when there's an absolute commitment from all stakeholders. Of recent, we brought in very strange and unexpected supporters in this group, and it is working. We brought in the EFCC, let me put it bluntly. We brought in the EFCC into the loop. We brought in the Department of State Security into the loop, so that all of us can collectively maintain and contain this cross-border smuggling, other than just going to wait for the trucks at the border. And this is working. So we're not helpless. We'll pull down this number. The numbers are coming down, but it's really a challenge, continue to sustain this, because ultimately the issues around the arbitrage will continue to resurface. The industry, and of course you have helpless neighbors around you. And what we're also considering is, why can't we just convert this into business, that we can supply them, because this is a reality around us. Why don't we engage them so that we can supply them legitimately, and so that we can cut off some of the arbitrages that is come with it. We're working on this engagement, massive engagement going on in that direction, so that ultimately we'll create a corridor now that we're importing. And beyond this, when we're able to get done with our refinery, and also the refinery that we have interest in, the Dangote Refinery, that flow of product will now be localized, and we'll have a control over it. And then cross-border movement of trust will now be business, and it will not be called smuggling.
Okay. Melo Kolokiari, the Group Managing Director of NNPC, it's been a pleasure having you on the program to shed light on so many issues that it's usually a remote allegation, but now you sort of clarified it. Thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you very much, Kingsley.
And this is still Good Morning Nigeria. We'll take a break right now. When we return, our second conversation will begin. Don't go away. Still watching Good Morning Nigeria, and to begin our discussion on the second topic, let's take this background report put together by Oyeyemi Ajayi.
Over the years, there have been agitation from people living in the Niger Delta for developmental projects. These followed environmental degradation arising from the exploration of crude oil, which has destroyed soil, thereby threatening the livelihood of the citizens of the region. This agitation led to the establishment of the Niger Delta Affairs Ministry in 2008 to promote and coordinate policies for development, peace and security of the region. With the inception of President Muhammadu Buhari's administration, the demands of the Niger Deltans were on the front burner in order to make the people have the sense of belonging. Top of their achievements include the commencement of the undergraduate degree programs of the Nigerian Maritime University in Delta State and other academic activities with the approval of 5 billion naira takeoff grants. There was also the setting aside of $170 million seed funding for the Ogoni cleanup. The cleanup project, which is a major focus of the current administration, is progressing. As at March 2021, 16 of the first 21 sites of the project have been certified clean. Approvals for the establishment of private sector-led modular refineries across the 9 states of the Niger Delta were made, with the first 3 refineries successfully completed, while construction is ongoing on others. This administration also resumed work on the 337-kilometer east-west road project, which was moved from the Presidential Intervention Fund to the Ministry of Niger Delta Affairs and was originally awarded in 2006, and it is expected to be completed by the first quarter of 2022. Recently, the Federal Executive Council gave approval for the establishment of 9 skills acquisition centers in each state of the region. The flagship program of the Ministry of Niger Delta, known as the Presidential Amnesty Program, which was to rehabilitate repentant militants in the region, was consolidated upon by the administration with many beneficiaries on record. Now, what is the impact of these projects on the people of the region? Why are some of the citizens still agitating and threatening to resume hostilities in spite of the numerous programs being executed in the region by both agencies of government, including the Niger Delta Development Commission? What more can be done to boost the growth of the region? These are some of the questions guests on NTA's Good Morning Nigeria will be answering shortly.
All right, thank you very much, Oyemi Ajayi, for that backgrounder. With us in the studios now to discuss this issue, we'd like to welcome Ajuri Ngelale, his Senior Special Assistant to the President on Public Affairs. Ajuri, thank you very much for being with us on Good Morning Nigeria.
Privileged to be with you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And then also joining us this time via Zoom is Chief Dr. Chris Eke, is President Emeritus Ijo Youth Council. Dr. Eke, delight to have you on Good Morning Nigeria after such a long while.
Thank you and good morning.
Okay, so let's begin first with Ajuri Ngelale. I mean, you listened to the background report by our correspondent, Oyemi Ajayi, but much more incisively, is the narrative about the Niger Delta changing under the Buhari administration?
Well, there's no doubt about the fact that the multifarious interventions of President Muhammadu Buhari's administration has begun to not just change the narrative about the Niger Delta, but indeed has begun to change the living standards of the people of the Niger Delta, which is even more important. If you look across sectors, you would find a level of investment and intervention that has not been seen in that region in the history of the country. And I want to be very specific about what I'm talking about. If you look at, for example, in the oil and gas sector, we've heard, of course, this morning from the GMD of NNPC on many of the interventions, but I think it's also important to emphasize the new investments that are coming in under this administration. You have the $10 billion Train 7, NLNG Train 7 project, which we know is going to create up to 40,000 new jobs in the region. The president is implementing that in such a manner that ensures that we maximize the multiplying economic impact of that project on local communities across the Niger Delta in terms of construction, fabrication, and other procurements, and involving indigenous companies in that process. That is going to add 1/3 of our total current gas production capacity of 22 million tons per annum to that current total, which is going to take us to about 30 million tons per annum. Then the president hasn't stopped there. If you look at not just gas production, but also distribution, you recognize multi-billion-dollar investments in new gas pipeline infrastructure across the region, such as the OB3 pipeline. That's the Obiafu, Obricom, Oben gas pipeline, taking gas from River State through Delta into Edo, for example, where we have a gas processing facility in Edo as well. That's just one. Secondly, the massive investment Mr. President put in place in the ELPS, that's the Escravos to Lagos gas pipeline system, which is effectively being dualized from 1.1 billion standard cubic feet per day to about 2.2 billion standard cubic feet per day. That is going to double the gas provision to industries across Western Nigeria in terms of enhanced power production, etc. And then, of course, most recently, many of us are familiar now with the AKK, the Ajeokuta to Kaduna to gas, to Kano gas pipeline. Again, taking that about 2.2 billion standard cubic feet per day across northern Nigeria. So in the entire country is now being linked up to be able to maximally benefit from gas coming from the Niger Delta. And ultimately, that's going to have a lot of impact on development in the Niger Delta. And that's just gas. So if you look at hard infrastructure, look at what has happened with in aviation, where you have the brand new Port Harcourt International Airport that was not on ground. It barely started when Mr. President came into office in 2015. It's now fully concluded. If you look at even the road infrastructure, you look at the Boni-Bodo Road, which was cited in the report, about 37 kilometers, multiple bridges, that's going to, for the first time, facilitate the road transportation of gas products from NLNG on Boni Island to the mainland of the Federation for the first time in our history. That is a historic, bit of infrastructural provision. And then, of course, you would look at the new vision for the Niger Delta, where we have over 6 new modular refineries that are being constructed to ensure that we provide new jobs, new wealth to the people and the communities of the Niger Delta. And the list goes on and on and on. So I think anybody who is familiar with all of the interventions of President Muhammadu Buhari in the region would attest that really we've never had it this good, and we're still making a lot of progress moving forward to make it even better than it is today, tomorrow.
Okay, Ajuri, thank you so much. Let me now join Chief Dr. Chris Eke. You are at the center of everything that is happening in the Niger Delta. And can you give us, like Kingsley asked, is there a change in the narrative since this administration came on board?
And my friend Ajua, because I think he's been able to put some of those items that you call visionary documentary items together to analyze plans of government as opposed to the reality on ground. And he knows very clearly that he cannot say what he's saying to you on TV to me. If you claim that all those things that Ajua has said are happening, then people in Nigeria should be employed, should be engaged in this infrastructure development. It should be seen, jobs should be seen created. I do not contend the fact that, yes, all he has said are things that are going to happen or are being planned to happen or are in the stage of happening. But what's saying that it's taking too long to happen, just too long to happen. And in the last 3 years, there's practically nothing happening in the region. And that's why there's new palpable fear, new agitation, and new pressure about things. All these things are just real, that are plans that have been on since 2006, and every government that come in probably add a few blocks on it and move it on the next level. Now, between 2015 and 2019, there were some similar actions to drive this process, and that's what you're saying is the outcome of the activities between 2015 and 2019 that is now reverberating for Nigeria to celebrate. Since between 2019 and now, this region has been completely silent. First, if you look at the refineries it's celebrating, those are private investment. It's like saying that I, Chris Eke, was a medical doctor, built a fantastic state-of-the-art world hospital, and the government says we're making progress because we built a state-of-the-art hospital. These investments are private sector-driven investments, which I think the government has provided enablers. Beautiful. But we're saying that government needs to not just allow those big investors to be able to invest, but create the enabling environment for small investors to also survive and thrive. What is happening in the Niger Delta, and that's the reality, is that there's a complete obliteration of the middle class. So you have the very influential people up there in Abuja who can invest, big investment and partnership, and those who have been left to nothing. So the cleanup in Ogoni, he said about so many sites have been cleaned. You need to go to Ogoni and see for yourself what's happening. I don't want to say much, but you need to go there and see if those things that have been documented and reported to the government is happening. Let me tell you how this country runs. People sit down here, concoct information, and send it to high places, and those in high places take those information and work with it without double checking. If you take the East-West Road that is being celebrated and talked about, I can tell you clearly, it is the worst federal project in the entire country. I'm seeing roads built between Abuja and Lokoja, the Suku projects in Kaduna, the one going on the 10 lane between Kaduna and Abuja. You could see standardization. You cannot drive from my village in Patani to Port Harcourt with a steady 80 kilometers an hour on the East-West Road that is under construction. It's already failing even before the timeline. And I'm saying that it is lack of proper supervision by the supervising authority that creates that. So they just take reports on paper and then they present that to the public. That is not the reality. The truth is the intention of government is good, but the applicability is what is creating the tension. And you can see that. Why will in Niger Delta and Virgins, for instance, who we were able to placate in 2016, now begin to issue new threats? Why will people begin to call the Minister of Niger Delta to do the needful? Because his supervisory role in the activities that are ongoing now are questionable. And I think that Algeria needs to do more beyond taking information to go on ground, because he was a media man, and see for himself and apply those with the information he has.
Okay, Chris Eke, thanks a lot. We'll return to you, but let's get back to Algeria. There are a number of points that Chris has raised, and you also mentioned some. But let's look at, I don't know for how many decades now, but at least well over 10 years, East-West Road. East-West Road. At some point, you would hear that, oh, you know, when they were constructing, they didn't know that they needed to build new bridges and so on and so forth. It's like that road is taking forever to complete. And as they are working on, carrying on with the extension of the project, then you come to the Warri, Sapele, and Benin axis. Those portions, largely, actually from Benin to Sapele, a number of those portions have also failed. So what is being done with regard to the East-West Road to bring it to fruition and say, look, this road is done, dusted, and ready for use?
Thank you very much, Mr. Kingsley. Before I answer your question, I would like to take a moment to respond to the multiple points, many of which were false, raised by my brother, Chris, there in the other studio. I think we can make our perspectives known without calling into question the professional and personal integrity of those who are participating in the program. I think my brother Chris can do better in that regard. But I would say to each of the points that he raised, that first and foremost, there's nothing audio or propaganda-like about saying that the Port Harcourt International Airport was constructed by President Muhammadu Buhari's administration. The records are there. People are using that international airport today. There's nothing propaganda-like in stating that Mr. President, after a 12-year delay, that is multiple previous administrations, failed to construct a new train of NLNG for over 12 years. It is not propaganda to state that it is this president who did the groundwork to ensure that that project can commence. It is not propaganda to state that the Escravos to Lagos gas pipeline system 2, essentially doubling gas movement, gas transportation to Western Nigeria, was done under this administration. Nobody can say that that's not the case, because that is what has occurred. Whether it's the AKK or the OB3 or any other project I mentioned, none of them, as my brother maybe unintentionally but disingenuously said, were maybe in planning and all of that. We're not talking about planning now. We're talking about project execution. These are things that either have been completed or are in the process of being completed now. We're not talking about what we want to do. We're talking about what we have done and what we are doing, and then we can talk about what we want to do. So with that now said, I think really, you know, there's no doubt that there's still a lot of work to do. And I said that very clearly in my first statement. You cannot have 50 years, effectively, worth of neglect, maladministration, not just in the region, but of successive federal administrations toward the region, and expect that one administration over the course of 6 years would have bridged all of those deficits. I think Nigerians recognize that that's an unrealistic expectation. I think the question Nigerians ask us is, given what you've inherited, given the limited resources that this administration has had, have you made substantial and verifiable progress in making sure that those wrongs have been righted? And I think anybody who is not being political, who is not being biased, would recognize recognize that President Muhammadu Buhari has done just that. Now, on to your question, Mr. Kingsley, about the issue of the East-West road. This is another a major kind of sore point, right, when we talk about infrastructural neglect in the region. The President gave a very clear directive, and not just a directive, to the Minister of Niger Delta Affairs, Senator Godswill Akpabio, but also the accompanying resources to make sure that by 2023, all outstanding segments of the East-West road are completed. Work is going on across multiple sections of that road as we speak. That's an ongoing process. We recognize that there's not going to be a satisfaction until that road is completed, but we are very much adamant about making sure that that is done. And I think what's also very important is, within the last 6 months, what have we seen? We have seen Mr. President, conduct the groundbreaking on the Eastern Rail Line rehabilitation, running from Port Harcourt to Maiduguri through many of the southeast capitals. For example, new stations are going to be located across all the capitals of the southeast Nigeria, running out of Port Harcourt. That included, by the way, a brand new industrial park in Port Harcourt, where you're now going to have local fabrication, local construction of various items, not just in the oil and gas sector, but across industrial sectors. And then also a new facility, a new port facility on Bonny Island to accompany what we're doing with NLNG, with Bonny Bodo Road, and many, many others. So whether it's aviation, whether it's roads, whether it's railways, with the Wari, Itakpe, Ajeokuta rail line, 326 kilometers, abandoned since 1987. It was Mr. President Muhammadu Buhari that put in place the investment that has now seen to the total completion of that project. Will my brother Chris also say that that's propaganda, when everybody can attest to that? So I think we need to be circumspect and understand that we have huge deficits that we're facing in the zone. But whether it's the new maritime university in Orenkoko that Mr. President put in place, or the new modular refineries that Mr. President put in place, and by the way, it is false what he said, that it's only the private sector. The truth of the matter is that the NCDMB, the Nigerian Content Development and Monitoring Board, is a co-owner of some of the modular refineries that are being constructed in the zone, aside from the fact that federal government has put in place all of the enabling environment regulations to ensure that there are new tax incentives and other incentives to ensure that the crude illicit oil refining facilities that used to be there have been destroyed by the Nigerian Navy to incentivize the establishment of formal modular refining processes. So, across these sectors, everybody can see clearly, without having just Ajuri and Galali come and discuss it, that Mr. President means what he says when he says that he is developing the Niger Delta in real time with real action.
Well, I was just wondering, Jumai, some of the issues that you have raised, some persons will say, look, these are national assets, these are national projects intended to propel the national economy. Escravos pipeline and the rail line and so on and so forth. Of course, economists will argue that there are spin-off effects that the locals will also get. I think that part of what Chris Eke was talking about is the drop down to say, look, what is left? What do our people have? He mentioned that, look, there's no middle class, or the middle class apparently is excluded, from economic activities in that location. I just want to come back to one other issue relating to the mechanism for seeking to grow and develop the Niger Delta. And that is the NDDC.
Right.
The Buhari administration did not create the NDDC. It was created by the Obasanjo administration. Before then, we had OMPADEC. Before then, we had the Niger Delta Development Board, and so on and so forth. But it appears, I will state that again, that the NDDC is often enveloped in controversy after controversy. We know that there is a forensic audit that is going on, but the NDDC conveys the clear impression that it is an ineffective vehicle for bringing growth, development, and succor to the people of the Niger Delta. How can this narrative be changed?
Thank you very much, Mr. Kingsley. The reality of the matter is that Nigerians have, over the course of the last few decades since its establishment, have lost faith in the NDDC. Let's be sincere about that. And they've had good reason to. You've seen, we're talking trillions of naira that have been siphoned off by the political elite of the Niger Delta over the last 20 years under various party platforms. This isn't about any particular political party. This is an institutional problem that has been there. And the president is very circumspect about that, and I think one of the reasons why you're hearing about many of the atrocities that took place within the NDDC is because Mr. President has demonstrated that he has the political will to do what no other previous administration had done in relation to the NDDC by opening up the can of worms. We have to recall that Mr. President, across institutions, even the National Assembly, none of us, as ordinary Nigerians, none of us knew about anything like budget padding scandal in the National Assembly until Mr. President took office and opened it up for everybody to see that, look, this is the kind of institutional rot that we are confronting. So it goes far beyond the NDDC. It's really about making sure that we right the ship of state across tiers, across branches. But in regards to the NDDC, the probe has been going on, the audit has been going on. We're expecting the conclusion of that audit, according to the Minister of Niger Delta Affairs, Senator Akpabio. We're expecting that audit will conclude. The report will be given to Mr. President by the end of July. That should go a long way. By the time all of the details come out as to what has transpired within that particular agency, I think Nigerians would have enhanced their confidence that indeed we've taken the critical first step in moving in the right direction in terms of providing transparency in the operations of that particular interventionist agency. And I think also we should note that for the last 20 plus years, we had the NDDC coming out of a rented building. The headquarters was a rented structure. It was President Muhammadu Buhari who said, look, we cannot afford to be, because really it's symbolic, wasting resources unnecessarily. You have an abandoned building for over 25 years. It was Mr. President that came and said, look, we have to complete it. We've now completed a world-class headquarters for the NDDC while the audit is going on. And I believe that even though it has a controversial past, Mr. President is charting the course for the NDDC and other interventions we're making in the region to be widely accepted by the people of the Niger Delta in terms of credible transformation of these very critical arms of government.
Okay, Ajuri, thank you so much. Let me now join Dr. Chris Eke. You've listened to Ajuri and you've sort of lined up, things that are sort of not working in the Niger Delta. And let's talk about the new vision of the Niger Delta NEVIT, which President Buhari initiated in 2016, where they said that the people of the region will benefit maximally from what they have in their land. And it was all in consultation with the elders of the Niger Delta. Then I begin to ask this question, why is it not working?
Thank you very much. Again, I'd like to state it here unequivocally that it's one thing to be able to, say nice things about the government, and another thing to be able to verify those things. I haven't changed my position, and I like what Kingsley said when he said all these mega projects that my friend Ajuri is talking over there are in the national trunk line for national economy, for more money to the center, to do infrastructure wherever the government, the federal government so choose. What is in need for the Niger Delta? I think that's what we're talking about, the Niger Delta under review. And I'm saying that as far as I'm concerned, all those beautiful plans, whether you're talking about taking gas to the west, taking gas to the north, it's not reflecting in the average life of the people where the gas is coming from. All the modular refineries, you want to check how many there are and who own them? We're celebrating the Dangote Refinery. What are the equity takings of the people of the Niger Delta? When we started this thing in 2009, there was an equity that was to be taken up by the Niger Delta people. It is not yet been given to these people because it was saying that they have no capacity. They need to be allowed to take up equity to build capacity. What Ajuri is talking about is a situation where you have people who are made, who are able to do things. We're talking about a situation where people are left out for over 50 years and they need to be given a lifeline to come out of it. Now, in terms of the infrastructure, the Niger Delta and the vision of Mr. President, I'm not contesting the fact that Mr. President had a wonderful vision for Nigerians. That's not what we're talking about. We're saying, is it happening in Niger Delta?
We seem to have lost our Zoom network, but we'll sort of return to him. Ajuri, you're now in the studio. Let's talk about the Okay, he's back. He'll continue now.
Take the audit, for instance. There's no book that says if you're auditing an agency, you need to pause activity in the agency. And let me tell you, while I agree, and on this station I had said that I support that forensic audit. I remember it clearly when I said that when it's so I said also that you do not, are we there? Can you hear me? While I agree totally that the forensic audit must continue, I said also that you don't pause the functionality.
Okay, Ajuri, let's talk about the new vision for the Niger Delta, initiated by President Muhammadu Buhari. It was all in consultation with the Niger Delta Elders Forum, PANDEV. And if there are so much complaints coming out that things are not working the way it should, who is to be blamed here?
Yeah, thank you very much. When you talk about the new vision for the Niger Delta, you're really looking at a wide span of activities that have really been started under this administration. When you look at, we've talked a bit about modular refineries, we've talked about the Ogoni cleanup. I think it will not be correct to suggest that because many of the projects are federal projects as they are known, that means that they would not have a direct impact on the lives of the people of the Niger Delta. Most of the projects I've mentioned, in fact, if not all of the projects I've mentioned, all have local content built into the implementation or execution of those projects. So the jobs are going to the local companies across the Niger Delta, to the people of the Niger Delta. Even the raw materials being used in many of the construction projects are being sourced from the Niger Delta, multiplying economic impact in terms of the projects. So that's on the one side. On the other side, we cannot force, as a federal government of Nigeria, we cannot force the state governments in the Niger Delta to do what they don't want to do. Those are essentially autonomous subnational entities. So we cannot, tell them that they must provide jobs, that they must invest in infrastructure and all of that. What we can do is set the parameters, partner with them where we have serious committed administrations, and we see this across the board. If you look at what we've done in terms of with partnership with the Akwa Ibom government, for example, in the establishment of the new Ibom seaport, for example, the new massive industrial park facility that the federal government has partnered with them in bringing to the people of Akwa Ibom state, you would know that all this, that has nothing to do with politics. That's a PDP state, APC-led federal government, but that has not stopped the administration of President Muhammadu Buhari from clearly identifying serious administrators in the South-South geopolitical zone and saying, look, those who are serious, we are going to partner with you. We're going to give you every support that you need to positively impact on the lives of your people. And we've done that not by words, but with actions. And what I mentioned about Akwa Ibom is just one example out of many. So aside from doing that, aside from partnering and really bolstering state governments and local governments that are committed to that developmental process, we are on our own end from the federal government side, ensuring that we are not just talking about these projects, because several governments have talked about these things. They haven't done anything. They just stole the money. What we are focused on is what we are doing, what we are delivering. And so I would just ask my friend Chris to let's when we say plans, let's not use the word plans. Let's talk about what we have done. And I just challenge him once again to mention anything I've mentioned here, to say what I've said that is not being constructed on the ground.
Okay, well, we're not. If it's going to be you said, he said, he didn't say, he didn't add. We'll lose time, and we're getting pressed for time now. Chris Eke, we understand that you are back. Let's maximize the time you have with us still via Zoom. You were explaining something before you went. You want to continue with that explanation, that's fine. But I also want to ask this question about the NDDC. You know, what needs to be done to really transform the NDDC into a viable catalyst, as it were, for the development of the Niger Delta? In recent months, the whole cry has been appointed NDDC board, appoint NDDC. It's like when you get appointed to the board, you are like almost like a governor. You know, what everybody's just concerned about everything else, and then you go to the region, and all you still see is evidence of poverty.
All right, thank you. The first cry about appointing a board is an issue of the creation of the NDDC as an act of parliament. And if we run a democracy, the constitution and those acts need to be respected. The NDDC cannot run without a board. So that should be established. What is happening now is an illegality, and it's running because nobody has contested it. Now, when there is a board, it provides for all the states to be represented. And then it provides for the states to have voice in the development plan for that agency in the region. So the essence of the board is not because people want to use that. The president can choose the best of the people to appoint. He doesn't have to listen to anybody to appoint anybody. So if he has team that he trusts across the state, he can put them on the board so they can have a voice and represent their people in the decisions and policies of the board. That's why people are saying the board needs to run. Now, it is also so because let me tell you, and I want to say it unequivocally, that if you take away everything that the NDC has done in the Niger Delta in the last 21 years, you perhaps will not find a federal government presence in infrastructure in the Niger Delta, apart from gas and oil infrastructure. So as corrupt as it is linking the Niger Delta slowly, but certainly. And in the last 3 years for this audit, nothing has happened apart from the completion of the permanent office, which is okay, is a plus, but that's not the focus of the agency. It needs to build and expand, connect the region for the people. So that board is important so that there will be voices. I don't know where there's no corruption. Though. There's corruption in Abuja, there's corruption in the central bank, in NNPC, in the state government, but they are running. And as EFCC is investigating these bodies, they function. What had happened is that no board, no functionality, just an audit. And we're saying that the audit can run concurrently with a new board who would do his job different from what previous board has done. And I'm not commending previous boards or previous governments or even this government. In the next few years, you will see what they'll say about it. But every government that has come in place sets a few things to be done. And now this government is taking the bold step to finishing and completing, and we applaud the government. But for the Niger Delta people, we have been pushed back to 2007, and this is not acceptable. And there's no other story he's going to tell me. You're talking about the Ibom seaport and all of that. The state government investment and federal government is trying to do an uptake in it. It's just like the Dangote Refinery. The federal government is doing the federal government is quick to join in celebrating any new win. But I'm saying it is not sitting down with the people to also achieve for them. You talk about the Krenkoko University, it wasn't Buhari's initiative, it was already there. Amechi tried to stop it, we fought it, and then President Buhari gave a go ahead and funded what was left of it. So we commend him for that, for completing those projects. Some other presidents may have thought it otherwise to do things differently. So I'm saying that whereas most of the projects of this administration are towards feeding the national trunk line for more income to the center to be shared across the states, the Niger Delta that has been peaceful since 2009, as agreed, has suffered more degradation, more neglect, more unemployment, less infrastructure. The only infrastructure you can celebrate is the East-West Road, and I'm telling you that it is substandard as it is. The minister needs to come up here and get the engineers to work and redesign and construct for us a road that reflects what the people demand. Apart from that, you want to talk about the local content offices. An office, people build offices every day for themselves. So most of the things, train that will go from Port Harcourt to Maiduguri, what will it take from Port Harcourt to Maiduguri? Probably to bring cars from Maiduguri to Port Harcourt. You don't have a train that will network you between Calabar to Benin yet. So we are saying start small, link the people first, and then expand like a web. But most of the things are transnational, and it gives an impression that they are only trying to satisfy a national interest and at the expense of the pool of the Niger Delta. And that is why you are seeing this palpable tension over and over. Akwabe himself is a Niger Delta. The people will not be against him the way they are if they see a commitment. And the current sole admin, of course, not the first sole admin in NDDC. There was just a disconnect, and the people felt that if you continue this way, they will get nothing in the region at the end of this administration. Most of the things are promises, and that's what it is.
Explain to our viewers, when you say that we are back to 2007 in terms of either tension or agitation in the Niger Delta region, that looks potentially scary. If that is so, what can be done to take us back to 2016 or even recently?
I was president of the Jury Council in 2007. And at that time, the people of the region had told themselves, look, rather than beg and die, I'd rather fight and die. And that's where we are now. people are beginning to be emboldened and are willing to dare the government at the expense of their life, because the peace that the region has provided for the country is not being compensated. I can tell you there are more, for instance, development going on in the northeast where there's so much conflict than in the Niger Delta where there's peace. And in 2007, we were told that if we are able to get our people to drop arms and embrace amnesty, this place will be a new construction hub. I'm saying to you, remove what NDDC has done till date, remove the east-west road. I do not see any construction going on. I do not. And then the people are saying, so what did we give peace a chance for? If this is going to be what's going to happen to us, we better go back to the trenches. We better die fighting for what is ours. And that's not good for the country. The country has of course, you go to the east, you have the Eastern Security Network and IPOP there. You go to the middle belt, they're agitating. The northwest, the northeast, they are all bandits and headers fighting themselves. You come to the southwest, of course, the Yorubas and headers are fighting. The only region where there's no clear confrontation in the government is the Niger Delta. And that region is a very volatile region with capacity. And once it joins in this frenzy, of course, you know what we're talking about. So the federal government in dealing with the region needs to double its pace, be more committed. I'm not saying at the expense of other regions, develop other regions, but please focus on the region as it is. The region is providing for the federal government. The federal government needs to address this issue in terms of infrastructure, employment. I'm not saying it must employ people, but it must create the enabling environment for people to be self-employed or to employ themselves. We're not talking of this wound dressing. Today, Amnesty Office gives some people a sewing machine, gives some people wheelbarrows, ministry gives this or build this. We're saying that a roadmap where people can plug in and be entrepreneurs. One of it is to allow the local content to also now cause the oil and gas sector to allow locals to participate. Most of the local people here cannot participate. Those who have vessels, their vessels are parked here because the companies don't take them. The companies don't hire vessels from people from the region. So they buy vessels with bank loans, and those vessels are dumped at our water shores here. You go to Warri, go to Port Harcourt, you'll see it. Those who are able to do simple modular refineries, they did not get the license. So the what you call the profile is thriving. There's the presidential artisan mining thing. I said the Minister of Petroleum and the Nigerian government need to work a blueprint where this profile can be transformed, just like the Zamfara gold system, where local communities can establish monopump refineries that will ease the environmental degradation. The cleanup issue that is saying needs to be more beyond Ogoni. There are more devastating sites in the Niger Delta than Ogoni. So when you continue to celebrate Ogoni as if you have solved the entire Niger Delta problem, you make a mockery of a system. And that is what we're saying. Don't say things about the big things you've achieved when the small things are here and are going to snowball over time.
Chris, I'm still going to stay with you briefly because we're sort of running out of time. I would like to ask you this question. Now that the president has listened, we have a new board of the NDDC. What are we going to see going forward now?
So it is our duty to charge that board to its responsibility. It is our duty to ensure that that board don't play what it was playing with yesterday, today, because that board is also now a product of a new agitation. The NDDC in itself was a product of our agitation. The Niger Delta Ministry, of course, I was in the forefront of it to get it created. And part of the problem of leadership that has created all this wahala is simple. When they get into those high offices, they shut down their ears and their mind and think that they know it's better than the people who had asked for these things, and they don't seek advice. And it's very peculiar with the Niger Delta. So going forward, we will get that board by force to listen to the people and draw a blueprint that is achievable with the desire of the people. It's one of the things we intend to do. We'll continue to ask the national question. What is it that is for the Niger Delta people, considering the fact that the majority of the resources being used to develop every other region is from here? And that is not a fallacy. That is a fact. Even the LLNG that Ajiri is talking about, apart from job creation for those who are welders and fitters, laborers, that's what we want to call them. Once the thing starts, you won't find Niger Delta people there anymore. They will kick everybody out. Those gas will be sent to Europe and everywhere, and the money coming from that will be shared by the entire 36 states of the Federation. What percentage of it in equity will be reserved for the development of the Niger Delta? Those are the questions we are asking.
Chris Eke, excuse me, Chris Eke, thank you very much. Ajuri, well, I mean, we'll give you the opportunity to respond to some of these issues, but the more immediate concern has to do with the threat issued by the Niger Delta Avengers. Yeah. We do know that the Vice President, Yemi Osinbajo, engaged in some shuttle diplomacy to the region sometime in 2016, I believe, or 2017. And the outcome was salutary to all and sundry. I wouldn't know what has changed to trigger this latest threat. And as Eke explained, elsewhere around the country, there are pockets of conflicts, and the Niger Delta appears quiescent. Now, if they were to also light a match in that part, it's going to be serious. Is the government thinking of much more rapid engagement with the agitators in the Niger Delta before they get even more angry?
Thank you very much, Mr. Kingsley. With many of these things, there's a word in Scripture that says a soft word turns away wrath, right? We've seen that in evidence, not just by His Excellency, the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, in his consultations across the Niger Delta a few years ago, which led to many of the projects that we're today discussing and initiatives of engagement that we're discussing today. But Mr. President himself, President Muhammadu Buhari, has been very active, very frontal in directly engaging with the leadership of the various socio-political, socio-cultural groups in the Niger Delta. Just a few days ago, he had a meeting in the State House with leaders of the Niger Delta and PANDEF, etc., to really get to the heart of these issues, where they were able to directly table the issues before Mr. President, and he was able to directly assure them of the immediate implementation of many of the issues that they had raised, at least the solution to those issues. So the fact that we do have a new board, the fact that we have been very responsive to the agitators. That's just step one in a larger process where we now carry out what we have in good faith begun to implement with respect to the various demands that they have made. But I think it's extremely crucial that when we're having these conversations, irrespective of political biases or whatever the case may be, that there should be a baseline set of facts that we agree on, that we don't pretend are not there, even when we know that they're there. So, for example, if we talk about the Port Harcourt-Maiduguri rail line, which my brother Chris, had kind of myopically described as a means by which we can carry cows to the south-south, I would say it's much more than that. That indeed it involves, for example, a brand new port on Bonny Island. It involves a brand new industrial park in Port Harcourt. These are major elements of how we're going to create wealth in the Niger Delta. And I need to also emphasize that it was President Muhammadu Buhari that put in place the no-tap scheme, the no-gap scheme. That's the National Oil and Gas Park scheme, where we're setting up oil and gas parks like the one in Emayal 1 community in Ogbia, Bayelsa State, where we're going to have indigenous companies producing and manufacturing and fabricating the items we're going to be using in high-value oil and gas products that before now were being done in Singapore and Hong Kong and China. They're going to be fabricated here in Nigeria at these oil and gas parks. That is a major initiative of President Muhammadu Buhari of ensuring that, and that's not a transnational initiative, that's a Niger Delta initiative for the people of the Niger Delta to create wealth and create jobs in the Niger Delta to maximize the economic impact of that sector on the lives of Niger Deltans. So yes, we have a ways to go, but nobody should question the facts when we say that President Muhammadu Buhari has done more than any other administration combined in terms of uplifting the economic life of the people of the Niger Delta and the region at large.
On that note, Ajuru Ngelele, Senior Special Assistant to the President on Public Affairs, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Truly a privilege to be with you. Thank you.
Input. And Chief Dr. Chris Eke, President Emeritus, Ijo Youth Council, who joined us via Zoom. Thank you so much for your input, as always, on Good Morning Nigeria. It's been a pleasure having you. And that's Good Morning Nigeria for today. Join us tomorrow for another edition. I am Jumo Yesov.
Take care of yourself. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.